What's going on, guys? Autel here with FlytPath.com. Now, I wasn't really planning on doing this video, but I was very curious on how difficult it actually is to remove this camera. Now, the one thing that Autel actually does kind of market is the fact that you can remove this camera and swap it out eventually if you wanted to upgrade it, maybe purchase the 6K 1-inch sensor camera or even something like the thermal camera. Because of the fact that you can have one platform, which is a really nice thing that Autel did provide, is that they're marketing it as you buy the platform and then you have the ability to possibly change or swap out your camera in the future. But the big thing here is how easy is it to swap out? Because I'm so used to something like the Inspire lineup where you're able to then easily turn a knob, pull the camera off and the gimbal off in one motion, put something like the X3 or the X5 camera back onto it, made it super simple, but I do want to see how it is to actually remove this gimbal. And if you guys are new to my channel, my name is Autel. I do a lot of drone tech, tips, tutorials, and product reviews right here on this channel. So if that's something that interests you, please consider subscribing and also hitting that bell to be notified when I post new videos. And looking at this camera, you don't have that option to just have something easily plug and play just like you do on the Inspire lineup. Here you actually do have to remove some screws and a ribbon to take off this whole assembly. And because I already just filmed it and did it and put it all back together, I'm just gonna give you guys the Cliff Notes version of exactly what goes on when you are removing this camera and gimbal. Now, the first thing you're gonna need is a tool set. Now, this has the star pattern screws as well as a Phillips screw that you're gonna need. I will put that information down below. These are very, very small screws. Like, think of it as like eyeglass type of screws where they are super tiny. So know that if you are even gonna attempt to do it, make sure you have the right tools for it, as well as have something that is magnetic that you're able to then have those screws attached to it, because once you lose those screws, you're pretty much out of luck, and these are tiny screws. So first thing you want to do is actually take off this little plastic piece which has these little vent holes in it right below the camera, but there's two of those screws right here. You're going to want to remove this little plastic piece that covers this base plate here at the very bottom, right below the camera. And once you remove this plastic piece right here, there's going to be two Phillips screws, really, really small ones that are holding a plate down, and that plate is actually keeping the ribbon in place from your camera and gimbal onto the drone. Now that that plate is removed, you can now unplug the ribbon from the gimbal to the body. And what I did is actually use this small little metal piece right here, which kind of helps me pop the sides up. So what you want to do is with the plate, you're going to actually use the sides and pop up one side and then pop up the other side and slowly kind of go back and forth really, really carefully. Now, once the screws are out and the ribbon is popped up off the connector, the last thing you're going to need to do is then slide this gimbal back just a little bit. What you're going to do is lift up the back portion here and pop it out. There's going to be two little holes as well as these two guides that are basically sitting inside the body of the nose that sit like that, and there's basically going to be two little holes from the gimbal that just slide straight through. So it's not screwed into the front of the nose, it's actually just resting inside of this little holder on the inside. Now, once you get out of the guides, you are pretty much done. You have taken off the gimbal. Everything sits in there. All you have are those four screws, two on the outer plate, then of course the one on the inside plate that holds that ribbon down. Now, once you have it out, that's one thing. Putting it back in, of course, is another tricky part because of the fact that you now have to do everything in reverse. The only hard part that I found that was very, very tricky is making sure that you are putting those pins back in place and firmly pressing it back into the connector. Now, that plate is really the hard part because you have to put the plate on and then the two small Phillips screws, which was super difficult. I highly recommend getting a tool set that is magnetic so you're able to then put the screw on the very tip and then screw that in, because there's been a bunch of times where I had to get basically tweezers to try to guide it back in and then screw it down. So that is a very difficult part to put in as far as those two smaller screws. Then once you have that smaller plate in there, putting the plastic piece back on is the easy part, and you should be good to go. Power everything up, and you have now taken off and put back your camera and gimbal on the Autel EVO II. Now, even though I was able to take off the camera and the gimbal, the one thing is, and as I talked about earlier, as far as them marketing it as you're able to, swap out cameras, just know it's not that simple as, using something like a Inspire type of camera system. The pins is what scares me the most. When you have to actually deal with a ribbon and a pin, and this isn't like a regular type of pin. There's about 50 or so super small pins on there that you have to put into place. So if it was something like plugging in a, you know, like a lightning cable or something, then I would say it's super easy. But the fact that it is one of those pins where you have to have everything lined up perfectly, and it is about, you know, ½ an inch long, that's the scariest part about it, because if any one of those pins were to damage or bend or anything, I think you're pretty much out of luck trying to have this thing calibrate correctly. So in short, yes, it can be done. Would I recommend it? If this is the only way you want it to go, and possibly buy one body or one frame and buy a bunch of cameras and do it, just know it is very kind of, you have to be very precise with it. It does take some practice, but you know, when you deal with something that small, just be very, very careful. It can be done. It's something I probably wouldn't say you want to do like in the field. It's not that simple as you have seen on maybe some other drones out there, but yes, it can be done. And that's about it, guys. Just a quick video on showing you how I removed and put back the camera and gimbal on the Autel EVO II. As always, if you guys got some value from this video, a big like would be much appreciated. And also don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos. This is Autel with FlytPath.com. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.